Okay, at 6 o'clock, I'm calling to order this regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Bandera, June 21st, 2022. We're at City Hall at 511 Main Street. All council members are present, our city secretary is present, our city attorney is present, and our marshal is present as well. Item 2 is the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Bill, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Most loving Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us all together this evening, Lord. We'd ask for your blessings as always upon the Bandera City Council. Lord, we'd ask that you brought us all together safely, Lord. You'd also bring us back home in the same manner. Lord, please, Lord, let us have a break in the heat and some respite and some rain. Lord, please bind up the wounds of this great country, both at the city, the state, and especially the national level, where we know that through you and through your Son, all things are possible. Lord, mostly we'd like to thank you for your Son who died upon the cross for our many sins. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right, item 3 is visitors to be heard. There's no one who has signed up to speak during the regular meeting. However, we have a couple of folks here who have some input during the workshop. So we'll move on to the workshop. Item 4 is a discussion on code enforcement, day-to-day operations, after-hours procedures, and cross-reporting. Will, since this was last discussed, have you come up with any ideas, any policies, anything to help us, especially on weekends and after hours?
Well, Lance has been kind of in and out a lot. I haven't had a chance to sit down with him much about it. He seemed agreeable to it. It's just he's been busy with all the emergencies he's had. So I guess the answer to that's not particularly, but it's just more of circumstances working against us.
Okay. How about within your department, more training on the ordinances, especially the sign ordinances and the cats, the sale of animals and those sorts of things?
Lights.
Well, as Rebecca is pointing out to you, I most recently, the last opportunity I had was with Mr. Thorne, and after the meeting we all had, he came up front and got a packet, and I asked him, by any chance, did he receive any information about the lighting ordinance? And he flipped right through there and showed me that he did indeed have the lighting ordinance information in his packet that he got that very same day. And I had checked when we last spoke. They are, and confirmed with Keeley, they are handing out the lighting ordinance. She says it's very difficult to get people to read any of the information that's given to them, and it's impossible to force them to do it. And I don't know what the answer is to that.
Rebecca?
So not only with I would think the outdoor lighting ordinance, but wherever things are happening that involve inspections. I mean, Bureau Veritas does our inspections for us, but I would think they would also be aware of our local inspections, our local ordinances that are implied. I don't know if that's the only one right now. But for example, the fire code that's coming up on the agenda, should that be adopted, there are local ordinances that Bureau Veritas would have to follow there as well. There might be other examples that just aren't coming to mind right now. But if they're not going to provide that service for us, then I would think need to be another layer of internal inspections.
Yes, ma'am.
Someone needs to review to make sure, and so just on the lights still, y'all know me, just driving around town or walking around town at night, you see houses with new festoon lights out in their yards. Those are against our ordinance.
What kind of lights are those?
Well, like holiday lights or like the big bulb lights. They're on at restaurants and they're going up. If you guys want to allow those year round, then we should consider adjusting the ordinance. I would think maybe at least on Main Street, cause it does help, I think, attract people to businesses and it makes town look alive and awake and festive and fun. But when you see them, I don't know, they're like allowed for holidays only, particularly residential or maybe across the board. I remember when I first came onto city council, a few community members would say, y'all don't enforce the ordinances that you have on the books. Why are you making new ordinances? And I didn't really grasp what that meant until some time and some experience and realizing like, oh right, you know, if this isn't gonna be enforced, well, it needs to be enforced. If it was a council decision, it passed as an ordinance, it needs to be enforced. You know, we talk about the litter in town and in the park, there's just all kinds of things that it seems like, and I'm not trying to put all the responsibility, you know, onto your department, but I think collectively, you know, how do we figure out what adjustments do we need to make, if any, and if not, who needs to be enforcing the ordinances?
Council comment? Jerry?
Since there is so many different per se violations, not just on lighting but so many other ones, could we just start with sending a letter to these citizens that specific to them? Just making them aware, first starting off with an education. And then once you've told them and you know that those particular people have been told, and they're not complying, you have to take further action at that point, whatever that may be.
Is that a part of Earl's process, or, I mean, if,
It is in many instances. We have, for the longest time, gone with a very soft-handed approach, but like you had mentioned in a previous discussion about the junkyard that was trying to get taken off, and we've had to kind of come down hard on him and go ahead and issue him some citations, and he is starting to move in the right direction, but it took the stick, not the carrot, and it may be that and maybe that's what the council wants to change is to transition over to the stick and less carrot. But what Jerry's talking about is more carrot, and we tried to apply it with what the council wanted, and I'm not critical one way or the other. It's just I've said numerous times in the past that code enforcement here for the longest time has been done poorly, badly, wrongly, not at all, almost corruptly, as an advertisement for that person's business. And we have tried very hard to do how it's been wanted done, but across the board, and treating everyone the same. I don't agree with, it's not perfect. Our code of ordinance is not perfect. Some of it's very old. Some of it's very difficult. And we're, as y'all can see, we're working on it. And it's somewhat of a tedious process sometimes. But if y'all would like to see more of writing them citations and having them come to court, and them and our municipal court judge working out the problems, that may be the better solution. But that was not the feel I was given when we took this over. And if that's the direction y'all would like to go, just let me know and I'll head that way.
Rebecca?
I think that ideally reaching a solution or gaining compliance, without a citation, if that's possible, is great before fining people. But I think as long as there's a structure in place that it's the same, here's your letter. I thought that was kind of set up before, like you get one warning, whatever that flow is of that process prior to a citation can be applied in certain circumstances. I mean, you know, you pull someone over for speeding, you might give them a warning the first time, but you see them again and they're, you know, then you might cite them the next time. I would lean to your discretion, but I think there's too much, both with the code enforcement, officer and the marshals, and then things that we kind of assume Public Works are seeing with their eyes out in the community that just somehow aren't getting resolved and addressed sometimes.
Well, of course, the Public Works end, that will be Public Works Director having to give direction on that.
Right.
I mean, we rely on just the citizens at large a lot to report stuff. I spend an hour or so usually each morning driving around and looking for things. And I've been very, very pleasantly surprised that most of the stuff that I report to Earl, he generally is on top of. He's seen it, he knows about it, he's already aware of it. Maybe 1 out of 10 of those that I see in the mornings, he's not aware of, but he's also having to do patrol duty right now, so he can't be on top of everything, but he's doing a pretty good job of keeping on top of it. But he's taken that direction of, we need to, get compliance and not so much on the writing citations. Now, like about the junk situation, I just straight told him, look, I know this is coming, it's gonna be brought up, it's just a matter of time. And sure enough, that very same night I said that, he got brought up. And I said, what? Next day I said, yeah, I was right, he got brought up. The soft-handed approach is not working, he's not getting the message. It's time to issue him some citations, and he can come to court. The judge, just getting a citation doesn't mean you're getting fined. It's just a summons to come to court. The judge can say, well, you've got 10 days, or you've got X amount of time to clean this up. He can handle it however he wants to. It's just, it takes it out of our hands. We don't levy the fines, we don't decide guilt or innocence. And a lot of times that's what we're doing when we're saying, well, you better clean this up or else. And if we keep coming back every couple of days and going, you better do this or else, you better do this or else, they're not doing it.
And there is no else.
There's no else. And, we're their buddies and, we're not being too hard on them. And, yeah, y'all aren't getting any phone calls complaining about the mean old police, making them clean up, But, I went over there and took some pictures. The next door neighbor who's cleaning up and trying to make his house and property very presentable and nice and everything else. I went over there and talked to them, and they said, oh, you don't have to look over their fence. We've taken a big chunk of fence down and come around here. And, oh my, it was way worse in the backyard than what I thought it was.
Well, from what I understand, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think from what I understand, that was part of his compliance with, or this person who I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but moving the stuff out of from site they thought was the solution, but that's still a part of the nuisance problem, if I'm not mistaken. But clarify for me the difference between the structure of some of our fines is different than having a citation. Is that, so for example, if you start work without getting your permit, you're paying a fine, you're not getting a citation and going to court, is that correct? So where are those?
If you start work and you don't get a permit before you start working, the permit costs more than if you came up here and got the permit like you were supposed to.
Is that the only situation where it's the fee that you pay is not through a citation? Every other ordinance violation?
It jumps out at me right off the top of my head.
Yeah,
Okay,
should be.
okay,
That's pretty common.
okay.
Tony?
So, I think we're clear on what the problem is. I think I'd like to talk about solutions, if I may. I think Suzanne, you and I a couple of years ago talked about this as an approach, that we pick one ordinance that we know there's an issue that is not being enforced fairly across the board. We focus on that. We send a We send a letter out to all of our utility people and say, you know, this is the ordinance that we realize that, you know, things have been laxed, but this is the ordinance we are focusing on to get it under control. And if you happen to be a violator of this, you have 2 weeks, 14 days, whatever. And in 14 days, we will be driving around specifically looking for this code violation. And we can have the Department of Public Works, we could have all of our marshals, our reserves, the weekend, whatever. And not only is this just kind of baselining it and piece by piece getting it under control, but it's a training mechanism too. You're training your officers, you're training your Department of Public Works, you're telling them what the process is on how to report this. And then once it's reported by an internal source, whether it be us or whether it be a resident that comes to one of us that we report in, however it gets to the thing, you know, then it's documented and it's put on their address, it's put on their file, it's put on their utility bill, and we move on to the next one. You know, every month maybe we focus on a new one, like a training thing. If the ordinance needs to be modified to where it can't be enforced, if we feel like something's in there that isn't enforceable, then that's the time to fix it. But, I mean, we're not going to be able to fix this overnight. This has been going on, and I'm about solutions. We can gripe about all the culprits. But I mean, lighting is an issue, signage is an issue, construction on the weekends, mainly. You know, people selling things without permits on the corners, garage sale signs, you know, whatever it may be. I think we just need to do it in chunks, or we're not going to get it done. We're going to be spinning our wheels. So, thank you.
Tony, I believe, if I remember correctly, we did start that program, but then there was no follow-through on the end of code enforcement at the time, because it was an 8 to 5 job in the end.
Which is a lot of the problem. It doesn't need to be an 8 to 5 job.
Exactly.
It needs to be a flex job, and in my opinion, obviously. I think that needs to be
Further
stated.
comments?
Might I inquire if you would have a particular code that you would like to start on?
Lighting would be a great one. Signage, those seem to be a big one. Those,
Yeah, you know, I haven't checked with Keely, but just these banners that pop up, the now hiring or the
you know, and a lot of times,
motorcycles welcome, these things.
I'm truly under the belief that people do not believe that you know, they're not intending to violate. They just don't know what it is. And by sending it out, and maybe we post that specific ordinance on the main front on our webpage and say, to refresh your memory, this is, you know, here's the sign ordinance or whatever. But I've also noticed, and I don't know if this is even still true because we've changed it several times and I wasn't on council the last time it was changed, but the sign ordinance used to have a percentage, and that if you were on the corner, you couldn't have a sign in the front or the side that you had to pick a side. Like, an example is the one over here at Pico, that building right next to Pico. There's signage on the side of it and there's signage on the front. And there had to be some sort of, and this was a long time ago in this conversation, and it may not even be in the ordinance. But if that's the kind of stuff that's being in violation, people don't understand that. I mean, they're trying to market their business. They're using every possible way that they can. But, you know, again, it's the fairness thing. And if somebody's in violation and maybe they just bought a piece of property or something, or maybe we even put in the letter that if you feel as though you're in violation, it could be that you were in grandfathered in, but if you choose to change it, you are no longer grandfathered. Lighting is a one. All lighting should be in compliance because it's been clearly 5 years now. Or really close to.
Has it been 5 years?
It has, yeah, it had to be 5 years by now.
Pretty close.
It's close.
Pretty
It's
sure.
close. I think
So
it was 18.
it's getting close. So,
Yeah.
you know, so everybody should be pulling their stuff into compliance at 5 years. And maybe that's the one we start with because that's a great warning sign. You know, we've been laxed. This is the date that you should be in compliance. Everybody's fixtures needed to be changed by this date. And if they're new, I hate it for you, but you chose the wrong ones. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's like,
I don't know how to, we gotta start somewhere. Got to start
Can
somewhere.
I add just another city's experience that I represent? They were having same kind of problems, same issues, and they decided to divide the city up into segments and they would do they talk to their solid waste provider to negotiate roll-offs quarterly for each segment of the city. They do a sweep through that section, identify all the violations, send out letters with all the violations. They follow through with education, and then they do a community cleanup in that section where it was their amnesty, it was their one chance. It's like the city's contributing this, and we're going to have people out here helping unload stuff into these roll-offs. But after that, there's no amnesty. You know, we're going to come through with enforcement. And they've been doing that now. They've continued the program, and it's been very successful getting their town cleaned up. Because when they go through and do that sweep, they're also tagging vehicles that are, need to be towed, that are abandoned, and things such as that. Educating the people on it, and then giving them an opportunity to come into compliance before they come through with enforcement.
You know, I mean, we do, twice a year, we do bulk pickup, so we could time it with something like, that's already scheduled with Republic. The other thing too is that I noticed, and this was kind of brought up the last time when we were talking about this, but like, the mulching service and things, this would be a great time for us to say, you know, don't use the bulk pickup for this, use it, you know, maybe we have a time where we allow them mulching for free once a year or something like that, or just have our, you know, something. I mean, I don't know, but or if they put it out on the curb, then we mulch it and we charge them. I mean, you know.
At one time, when we had the big machine, the big trailer, it was set up on Saturdays at the yard, and folks could bring their brush and have it mulched and either take it away or have it mulched and just get rid of it.
Take it to them instead
Rather
of
than
walking.
having to.
I'm good with that. Something like that, just something to encourage the
Cleaning up.
the connection and the compliance and the education along with it. I mean, you need to educate people, because I truly believe they don't intend to do this. Some people don't understand it and may do it defiantly, but anyway.
I think at the same time, while we're talking about citizens cleaning up their yards and our yards as citizens, we have to ensure that the city's that we're doing our part too. Drive around even the lot right next to me. I don't know who owns it. I don't know if it's a private lot. I don't know if it's a city-owned lot, but it's never been mowed in the almost 8 years I've been here. And it's constantly got trash and bags full of trash, and I'm always picking up trash over there. And so we have to do our part at being the city, that we're taking care of our own and keeping what we do own and what we are responsible for as the city picked up too. Because I'm not going to sit there and ask them to start citing people when the city's doing the same thing. I mean, we've got branches down and we've got grass this tall on property that we own. So, we need to stay on top of those things as well, and keep stuff mulched or mowed or whatever. So,
Lighted properly.
yeah.
Rebecca?
I think there is, under the nuisance ordinance, isn't there a rule related to grass height and
Yes, ma'am.
vegetation, that type of debris? And are you aware of any letters going out to people who own lots who don't take care of their lots, whether they're city-owned or privately owned?
I don't know if there's any going out yet this year. We've said that in the past, and generally we get people that are, some that are very cooperative, and they get out and mow it, and some of them they're madder than,
What?
very angry about it.
I doubt in the drought condition we've had to do too much mowing. I mean, I think I had to mow during that couple weeks.
I've
when we
mowed. I
rain.
had to have my yard mowed once, but that lot that's next to me, it's
Neglected.
yeah, it's never been mowed in the almost 8 years I've lived there. And then so the grass is probably 4 foot high, and the deer don't go over there and eat because there's like full bags of trash and stuff like that. So I'll pick up what I feel comfortable going in there without getting bit by snakes. Going in there and picking up off the side of the road. I mean, there's been mattresses thrown, and I think that the reason for that is because it's not taken care of. Because it's easy for people to drive down that little road right there, and it's just my house and nothing else. And so they don't think anybody sees it, and there's the high grass, and they can dump off a bag of trash or empty out their truck of beer cans and beer bottles, and it just stays full over there, and it's because the grass is tall.
And I think in
it's dark.
cases like this, it takes a village. I mean, it
Sure.
takes a village. We're not big enough to keep, that's why, I mean, when we see stuff like that, then you need to report that, and they need to find who does own it and who should be responsible for it. I mean, it doesn't, you know, it just needs to be kind of an FYI thing, and like, this is going on, and maybe they can do more patrols or figure out
I
something.
don't like being a snitch. Just
You
try to
always-
take care of it.
It's
You
not a
always have
snitch.
you always have the option, once you've sent those letters, for mowing, you've sent those notices, and they've had their warning, the opportunity to comply. What we used to do in Abilene, and we do in other cities now, is you have contracts with mowers, people who mow, you have them on call. It's a set rate per lot that they have to mow, and you call them, they go out and they mow it. You have a right to go on and mow that lot if someone else doesn't, and then you put it's called a lot cleaning lien, you put a lien on that property. Now, it costs the city money up front, but there is a lien that you'll ultimately get back, and, you know, I don't know if that's your answer or not, but rather than
Maybe
let
ultimately
it go.
what we'd have to do,
Yeah, it's an option, it's a tool that you have available.
And
I can
council,
look at these ordinances that y'all brought up, the lighting, signage, banners, and see what all I can kind of compress together to go into the next billing cycle, because we can do up to 2 pages.
Okay.
So I can see what I can get together on the most important highlighted sections, and then I'll email it out to you guys before the next billing cycle.
I say we pick one. Let's
I think picking one could be really effective, but what I don't think would be effective would be printing an entire ordinance. I think you've got to catch their eye and say, like, give these 3 topics and say, please, you know, make sure you're in compliance, the city is coming to enforce these, or, you know, however
Well, that's
it's
why I
worded.
said I
that it-
wouldn't print the whole ordinance, because it'd be too big, but at the most important section, and then reference the city website for the full ordinance, and have those like
And then
on the
have
front
it-
page
right.
for them to easily identify.
and remember too, y'all, Tony, I believe you were on council when this was happening. Rebecca, I know you were. Code enforcement, we started on the junk cars. Well, then it turned into a huge battle. I inherited this from my grandfather, and it, you know, but there are certain, in the ordinance, there are things like, you know, it has to run, it has to be licensed, or I'm working on this, or then the answer was to just cover it up. That way it was not a blight on the street. We also fought the junkyard kind of thing, and that turned out to be one man's trash versus another man's treasure. I mean, it was really a nightmare. We need to be clear, be concise, and follow through. Yes, Tony?
Well, I think that's why we need to battle the ones that there's no gray area. I mean, you're in compliance or you're not. Signage, there's statistics, specifics,
There's always
lighting,
gray area.
statistics, the
Right,
specifics. The nuisance stuff is, I mean, that's why I like math. There's one answer. English was always
Yeah.
somebody's opinion. So, yeah.
There's always gray area, and that's why we have the judges, and so when they write the citations, they can, that's what we paid the municipal court judge so much money for. That was a joke for everybody, he doesn't get paid that much.
We're laughing on the inside.
Yeah.
Well,
Anything? Yes, Will?
Not to disrespect anybody's opinion on a good starting point, the animal control ordinance, especially since it's next up on the list, the registered dogs, that would be my starting point for if we want to have, because frankly, the lighting one is going to be very problematic, testy, anger everyone, lots of trouble. I would start off with the dog registering ordinance. We have lots of dogs, we have lots of unregistered dogs. There's not so much of a gray area to deal with. You have a dog in the city, you live in the city, the dog lives in the city, the dog has to be registered. It's pretty simple. I think it's a good starting point. I mean, it's not real glamorous, it's not real exciting, but start off with an easy one.
That's true,
That does go on the
Yeah.
utility bill this year,
Rebecca had her hand up.
just as a
Rebecca.
So,
the dog thing?
I'm liking everybody's ideas and just kind of sharing ideas. And Tony, you did say one at a time. I kind of thought, well, maybe you could just mention 3, but what if it was one focus every month? But you kind of didn't drop the previous one. Like, so say we do start with register your dog, and include a little insert, and then the next month, you know, we registered so many dogs. Thank you, citizens, for, you know, you have some kind of a continuation of that, and then say, you know, focus this month is this. We want to encourage our citizens to comply with these ordinances. Please contact City Hall, see, you know, how can we help you come into compliance, or
Oh, yeah,
what
switch
questions?
over, right?
Jerry?
How would you enforce that? Just if you see a dog without a tag on, I'm really,
Well, we have a list of the registered ones up here. They have to be registered every year. I mean, we have to have a book. It's less problematic than what you would think. It's a little, take a little work, but, you know, many of these dogs are running loose in the yards. I mean, currently, we're dealing with generally when we come into contact with them. But frankly, drive along, you see the dog outside, check with City Hall if the dog's registered or not.
Okay.
And like I said, it's not really a gray area. The dog at this address, registered or not. You know, simple. It's you need to get a win on the books, and like I said, people aren't gonna be crazy about it, but they're not gonna be crazy getting told how their lights are gonna be, or, you know, they're not crazy about getting told when they have to mow their grass. And, you know, when I lived in the city, my dog got registered every year.
We're gonna check on that.
You did?
Yeah, I openly admitted I had no idea it was supposed to be annual. My dogs are the same dogs for 10 years. They were registered once, they have their tags, they're still, I mean, same vet, I get their shots every year, so if they followed up on my real stuff that needed, you know, it's all done, but yeah, I had no idea it was annual.
Well, I got a letter from the utility clerk 2 years ago reminding me to,
Oh, that's funny.
that's when I found out it was annual. So Lucy was shot yesterday, so we
She
will
was
get her.
what?
She was giving her. She was shot.
So I don't have to register her now.
She's like, I'm not paying that $10.
Harsh.
Cheaper than a $300 vet bill.
Yeah.
So I actually, so I think this is a good one to start with. Maybe every other month we start a new one, like we send it out, we focus on it, the education, and then the second month we send results. Then or the thank yous, or maybe we didn't get any responses and warn them. And then, and then the other month, the next month we start a new one.
Or you could list the citations given.
In the paper.
Yeah,
In the
you
paper.
have not, I don't mean people, I just mean like
Oh, totally
statistics.
people.
No.
I don't think we use public
No, you-
shaming properly anymore. We used to.
use the dog's name.
We got more.
Very well, right?
Rover was not registered.
Yeah.
He was picked up and taken to jail.
17 rovers.
Have we got anything else really to put into code enforcement right now? I think we've got some great ideas on the table. Jill's taking notes, I'm taking notes, Will's taking notes, I hope. And get moving on to that. Laura, did you want to speak on code enforcement? I know you and I talked about the cats previously. Are you interested in
That's
the-
why I'm here.
Okay, Josie?
Are we moving on to item B then, is that what?
Well, I'm just kind of wind up here, see if they had anything to say on this particular item
On code enforcement?
on code enforcement.
I do have a little something to say about that, and just to add on what other folks were saying about the actual notification process for the residents. I've lived at my house for 10 years, and I think I've registered my dogs maybe twice. And it was once when I was prompted, like you said, 2 years ago, and then I just kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
Like there isn't any sort of like follow-up, if I don't have it on the calendar or something, I'm not gonna be prompted to do it.
When your dog gets your shots, bring her up here and register them. It's an annual thing anyway, so.
I mean, she does send it every year. I know she sends out the letter every year when your thing's up. I know I've gotten it every year. I get it every year. I notice
I don't
that.
recall getting it.
Did we do it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you get it every year, a reminder.
I had to ask the
And
boss.
Rebecca, was that where you tagged on the extra $10 on the registration for the animals, did that go into effect?
I don't know that, did we ever do an extra 10? We did?
It's the
Or is it-
$10 registration.
Did we change the fee?
No, it's still a $10 registration fee. If it's a spayed and
If it's
neutered,
spayed, yeah.
if it's a spayed or neutered animal, it's $10.
If
And
it's
if
not,
it's
it's
not,
20.
it's 20.
I don't know.
Have y'all asked your vet to collect that and do that paperwork for part of the fee for you? That's how they do it in other cities.
To ask who to do that?
The
The vet.
vets, if you have a local vet, have you
They
asked
didn't
them to do
even
that?
know, because a couple years ago, my vet where Lucy goes, what's the one down here, Flying?
Country.
Hill
Right,
Country
yeah.
Vet, they didn't even know that the city registered animals. I brought a bunch of applications in when I brought Lucy in,
Yeah.
so no, there's not coordination with that.
I would work on the coordination on that. They're the best, in the best position to do that when they come in for their shots. They keep a portion of the fee, they remit the rest of the city, they handle the administration and send you the package. I mean, it's,
That'd be better
It's a
than
good
gathering nothing.
yeah, part's better than none, right?
And I guess that's assuming though that they're taking their animals to the vet.
Locally and
Right.
doing.
Well, we
I
have
mean,
3 vets in the area.
Yeah.
Everyone uses, not everyone uses the same vet.
There's other programs too that other places do that when you adopt a pet, you pay for spay and neuter at the time you adopt, and when you take your pet in, you get the credit back on a voucher. That way you've paid it up front, and you, if you want your money back, you take your pet in, but then it doesn't cost you anything when you take the pet in because you've already paid it.
Well, that's kind of on to our next item. Tony?
The other thing too is using the local vets. They don't always know that they live in the city because we have a strange anomaly in our Mecca where we have to use post office boxes if we want anything to be mailed to us. We don't use physical addresses if we want, and so the vet may have no idea where the people live.
It's not only hard, it's ridiculous, and I'm happy to have that on the record.
Only half the city gets mail.
Anything else on code enforcement, folks? Okay, then, let's move on to item B, discussion on animal control, the city animal shelter, cats policy and procedures, and a spay and neuter program. You know, y'all asked us for the, animal control policy. We don't have one as such. All we have is this ordinance. And there's actually more time devoted to animals than almost any other section in our ordinances. Still had a chance to look at this.
I do.
Well, and I remember the last time we looked at this was our Potbelly Pig, local advocate situation, and so that was adjusted, the ordinance was adjusted. One thing that did jump out at me, is any place where our zoning is referenced as our old zoning codes, like B1, B2, B3, R1, blah, 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 that we update those with our place types to avoid conflict.
2.04008, domesticated swine. Yes, Christine?
In the, on page 4, whatever, section 4, item B, the restraint animals kept on leash or chain, that obviously needs to be updated because Texas put into place the Safe Outdoor Dogs Act this year, where no chaining is allowed, period. So that whole section needs to be updated to
Can you please identify that section again?
Uh,
2.0,
2.01.007.
I'm sorry, what?
007.
007,
Bottom
restraint.
of page 4.
201.
Okay, page 4.
Page 4.
Oh, I flipped it this way. No wonder, couldn't find it.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for knowing that.
Way to go, Christine.
I care.
Me too.
Yes, Toshi.
There were some things I saw in here as well, like, you know, chief of police needs to be changed to city marshal. That's in several different places. Also on page 4, where it says page 4 at the bottom, it's section 2.01.005 under fees. It should say revision by the city council, not just the city. To me, it should say city council. And Then if you go to the next page under dogs and cats prohibited in food establishments, that's been a thing if y'all are not on Facebook. That's been a thing. I personally would like to see all of C deleted, and because I believe it should be up to the business owner whether or not they want to allow dogs in their establishments.
Where are you?
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
Page 5.
right.
Like what?
Section 2.01.010 under nuisances. C. Dogs and
Oh.
cats prohibited in food establishments. I'm fine with cats being prohibited, but it should be up to the business owners if dogs are allowed in their establishment or
Oh,
not.
dogs and cats prohibited in food establishments.
Because if I don't want to eat with the dog, then I don't go there.
That's E, sorry.
Oh,
That's
I
E.
crossed through it. I'm sorry.
I'm reading removal of feces, and you're talking about food.
We're having the animal.
Yeah.
I
Sorry.
agree, because so many people in, the businesses where I work, the animals can be
Right.
on the patio, not inside, but
And some places want to be able to let dogs inside. I've seen them at one place, and I even eat there. I don't want to name it because I don't want them to get shamed if people feel so inclined. I'm comfortable eating around dogs. I have 2 of my own in my own house and sit on my lap while I eat. So I'm comfortable eating around dogs.
Sure it wasn't a purse?
It could have been. They could be 2 purses sitting on my lap while I eat every day. But it should be up to the business owner, and if I don't want to eat when there's a dog or a cat in there, then I won't eat there. So I don't think the city needs to decide that. It should be up to the business owner.
Plus the whole service animal thing, because that would essentially bar service animals from going to the.
It does have an exception for that.
It does, yeah.
There are the animals.
Plenty of restaurants that don't follow this. I don't think I
Right.
knew this was in here. And thank goodness.
Yeah, I came across an incident where there was a service dog walking and the dog kept looking at me like it wanted to be pet. And I looked at the owner and she had a big old service thing on her vest and everything, and I said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't pet you. And she goes, you can pet it. I was like, oh, yeah, I won't, thanks.
that is one
Then
of my
that's not a
biggest
service
pet peeves.
animal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Biggest pet peeve.
The phonies.
I've had
The
customers
phony
with their
ones.
dogs jumping up on the chairs and barking and it's like, but that's a service animal. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Taking it out of
I
here.
forgot the in training.
Yeah. Didn't train this one at all.
Or mommy's full of crap.
Yeah, that's more that one.
Council, when we
Well-
get on to page 6, we have the animal control department. We don't,
Thermostat.
ma'am,
Daddy.
She's having a hot flash.
we
Here we go again.
our animal control is sending somebody from Public Works out to pick up a dog running loose or something. We don't really have animal control. We don't have training. They're not even vaccinated. I mean, we've got some real issues when it comes to animal control. Tony.
Right, so this was one of the things that I had brought up to you a while back about there's things in our ordinances that are talked about that assume we have it and we don't have it. And so along with, this whole thing about the dog registering and we should be educating our citizens and our residents and the people that are here on, what is the process? If they see something that they need, if there's a dead deer, a hurt deer, what are their steps to do this? I mean, if there's a dead deer on their yard, what is their expectation? Because their expectation previously was that we just drop everything we're doing and we go get the dog that they see roaming, walking down the street. Well, chances are, I think it's a pretty high percentage in the 90% that it's been proven that a dog will go home. If it hasn't gotten, out and it's, it's not bothering anybody, it's not chasing deer, it's not whatever, it's just wandering around. So, what is the expectation in this education thing? And then we need to set a process on what we expect. And then if the Public Works needs something to accommodate what we expect as a city council for our citizens that we provide, then we need to take that into account and accordingly, because we don't have an animal control person. It's whoever's on duty, and it's a different answer every time you call. And so I think we need to set the guidance, and because there's a lot going on out there. Feral cats, deer, feeding the deer, which I am adamantly against, because it not only brings the deer up, and you know, if you feed outside, like the wandering feral cats, I mean, look at all the issues we've had with the ducks and the, you know, and the people feeding them in the street, and then, you know, geese can be very angry. I mean, and they can be very aggressive to children, and if they think people are going to be feeding them, then we could be having a problem. If people are trying to feed them like they're their pets, then, you know, people that come to town, they don't, you know, it's just, and the other point, I knew there was one other point. When we feed outside in drought conditions, then animals that shouldn't be in town migrate here, and we bring rabies more likely into town from outside, and we put our own lives at risk and our own animals' lives at risk, and so we attract things like foxes and raccoons, and we're going to have them anyway. We're a rural area, but we attract them more when they are fed, when we are feeding outside, especially during drought conditions, and people think that they're helping, and they are not.
One of the things that I find really disturbing, because I do love my cats, love my dogs, love my birds, love everything. At one time, when the city was participating in the spay and neuter program, and this really irritated me, one of the Public Works employees was in charge of animal control, and the animals would go over there, they would come back, and people just turn them loose again. Well, now you have starving, spayed or neutered animals, and it's just not fair. I know there's nothing we can do about it. Spaying and neutering is great. It eliminates the population growth to some extent. But then you still have starving
When I see a deer feeder in the back of somebody's yard in the city, it's a little much. It's not just somebody, you know, feeding the deer as they, you know, a handful or two going through. I mean, this is a deer feeder in a backyard, 2 blocks off of Main Street.
Rebecca.
Good hunting.
I don't know what they're doing. I mean, considering we've seen arrows in deer before running through town, I don't know what they're doing.
We also have to combat the fleas that the deer bring in. Have you guys seen any ringtails lately? Because I just feel like it's coming up. Like I keep hearing about it. And I've seen too running out around during the day, and they're nocturnal animals, which is strange behavior.
They've eaten through I keep a Rubbermaid tub on my back porch.
I bet that's what it's
Are we talking about raccoons or ringtails?
It's a
Actual
ringtail.
ringtails. Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, it ate through my Rubbermaid tub where I keep the bird seed.
I wonder if that's what's getting into mine. There
Fox.
was a
2 foxes.
Gosh, what else was I had a thought. What was it? Oh, about the dogs though. And I don't think I've really encountered this myself, but I do walk around town quite a bit, and there are some dogs that maybe their bite is worse than, or no, maybe their bark is worse than their bite, but I don't want to test that, you know, at all. So if an animal were loose that even appeared threatening, I would hope that someone would respond to it just as soon as possible. And yes, maybe by the time someone gets there, it's gone home, and it's, you know, because I know my little dog has gotten out a couple times, and I've had to go chase her down or have neighbors call, and Lucy's out again. But I've been to the county commissioner's court meetings a few times lately during visitors to be heard. There has been some terrifying testimony about what's happening in certain parts of the county and certain neighborhoods about animals and really threatening lives of children and people and other animals. And I wouldn't want to relax on that rule in any way and create a worse situation.
Well, again, it comes to training equipment and that sort of thing, because for instance, let's say you've got a really aggressive dog, and that was the case of one we had at the pound. John couldn't feed him, he had to throw food over the top of the, what?
Josie wanted to speak when you're done.
Okay, over the top of the gate. But anyway, we don't have trank guns, we don't have nooses, we don't have traps, we don't have gloves, we don't have rabies shots, we don't have anything to address this. So we need, if council wants to go that way, we need to work on getting the training, getting the
He's got a
equipment.
pistol.
Hmm?
He's got a pistol.
Well, you can't just go
That's
around,
not
I mean,
humane.
no, you can't just go around shooting an
I
aggressive
watched
dog.
you wrestle that pit bull dog out by Dee's
Anyway.
hair salon.
Josie, did you want to
Oh,
speak?
I agree with Rebecca, like, little dogs, chihuahuas, whatever, you can kick out of the way, but if a big dog approaches me, and a big dog has approached me while I was walking my son in the stroller, and I held on, this was in town, and I held on to the stroller until the owner came and got the dog and protected my son, but it was very scary, and any dog of a reasonable size that is like coming at you is a pretty big threat. And I have an employee that was recently attacked on her property. She's in the county, but you know, and she had to get the rabies shot, and she's got tendon problems now. Her arm's all swollen, and it is a big issue. I do think you would want to call somebody, come get it.
Will, what do you say to Darcy's suggestion that you've got a gun?
That's why I carry
Generally
one.
speaking, if
One of
it's
the
a
reasons I
vicious
carry one.
dog or a vicious animal, call it all. The sheriff's office goes ahead and calls one of us. Now, the city, they do have several cages. They do have catch poles and gloves for that. You know, if it absolutely comes to it and they have to be shot, we've pepper sprayed them, pit bulls, and that sometimes works on them just fine. It keeps them occupied long enough to get the catch pole around them and get them into the cage. And oftentimes after that, they're just laid back as anything once they're in there. But usually if it's a vicious animal, I've only had to shoot a couple of dogs on duty in my career, and I'm very proud of like 3, and that's, doesn't happen very often because I'm a dog person and know how to deal with dogs generally. Some of them you can't reason with them just like people, but we don't have that many vicious dogs. We occasionally have that problem, and most of the time people have opted to get them out of town. And what happens after that?
I almost,
Used to the city got all the public works employees got the pre-rabies shots every year, and I don't know, that's something that just kind of
That's
evaporated.
kind of gone away. Council was concerned several years ago because it wasn't in the budget, so we put it back in the budget. But I don't think anyone has been encouraged to get their rabies vaccinations and all that kind of good stuff. I mean, they don't get rabies shots, the animal gets rabies shots. But,
I think
They
the only
get their
person that got it
tetanus.
was John this year.
yeah, they're tetanus, and there's another one that they get. Yes, Rebecca?
Okay, so I feel like I heard 2 conflicting things. I heard you say that we don't have gloves, we don't have restraints, we don't have kennels, and then
We do
Will
have
just
those
said we
things?
do.
Yes, they have
And we have, and
heavy-duty thick leather gloves, they have several catch poles. They have some animal traps, I don't know if it's enough for a big dog trap, but they have some decent sized traps, and they have a large, it's the aluminum insert that used to be in the canine unit that they use for dogs. They put it in the back of one of the trucks, and it'll,
Thank you, Will, 'cause I haven't asked in a couple of years, and I just assumed we still had not gotten those things. That's great,
So-
thank you.
and I feel like the other piece, I don't know where this came from, but I think it was from this table tonight, was saying we don't have anybody that works animal control, but I'm hearing that we do.
well, it's just, like was said, it's generally whichever city employee that's on call, or whichever one gets designated if it's during normal business hours. And like I said, if
Was
it's a
that-
vicious dog call, then whichever deputy is on duty and whichever on-call employee. I know there's been times that if it's a friendly dog, he's gone in the back of a patrol car and gone down to the animal control shelter, and, you know.
That was from you, right, Tony?
So, yeah, so that, I mean, just the fact that it says animal control department, we don't have any specific person that's called, we don't have one 24/7, it's whoever, and if they're busy with a main break on the weekend and they're the only on-call person, there's nobody working animal control. And we don't really have a set backup, there's not a process or procedure. As everybody know, I've been fostering for Sandra for the Saving Shelter Strays. I foster puppies for her, and so I've been pretty involved in some of the stuff, and I was actually heard a comment that was said, you know, they didn't even say it, thinking that I was realizing that I was standing there, but apparently a dog got brought in over the weekend, and one of the volunteers for Saving Shelter Strays goes in on a regular basis to feed the cats that we have, that have in there, and she checks on the dogs, and so I think we have somebody maybe on call that, you know, I think somebody goes over there on a regular basis, but they don't really coordinate, and so this lady makes sure she goes. Well, she showed up just to pick up something that she had there that she needed to transport an animal, and found out that there was a dog in the shelter, and it didn't have any food, and it didn't have any water. So normally she would be notified. So I don't know if we had a new person on duty, but something fell through the cracks. And this weather that we're having, you know, that can't do that. We can't do that. I'm saying it's an accident. It doesn't happen all the time, but we just need a protocol, a policy, a procedure, and we don't need to be relying on volunteers to just, they're there to help us, you know, kind of supplement what we don't have, but sometimes it feels like they're doing a lot more than that. So, and it's because we're probably understaffed, and which is our job to fix that. So,
Lori, you and I touched briefly on a spay and neuter program. Do you want to share that with council?
I would just like to encourage you to please, let's see if there's some grants available, something. The cost of taking a cat to get, the last one I took to Bernie cost me $100. I just can't keep on paying that. I know when I first moved to town, there was a program here in place. I don't know, maybe we contact some of contact the vet school at A&M and see if they've got people that could come out, you know, ever so often. I don't know what, but there was 4 of us at my end of town that were doing this on a regular basis, and all of us that now are drawing Social Security and just can't afford to continue to take them. So, if anybody's got some information, Josie, I don't know, if you, I was told that you may have some.
Yeah. I was doing the same thing that you're doing too. In my residential area, there's a huge cat population. I lived there for 10 years, and this started like 2 years ago. I had one porch kitty for all that time, and then just the masses started showing up, reproducing, and you know, kittens would show up. So I spayed and neutered myself, probably like 10 cats. And even in Kerrville, Freeman Fritz, their prices have gone up. It was like $60. That's not how I want to be spending my cash. But I think a TNR program would go a long way, even if part of it is education. So like educating everybody in the city, like, hey, you know, you can use these traps and trap the cats and go book them for the $50 or $60 at Freeman Fritz or however much it costs at Bernie. Additionally, if the city did have some funds to put aside, they could have some sort of voucher program, and you had mentioned previously Bandera had one. Maybe, I think from my conversations I've had, we had a grant at one point. Maybe that's available again to apply for the grant, but to give some sort of like, even if it's a partial reimbursement to these volunteers that are like taking action and getting the cats there. And y'all had talked about the public works people. I guess they did some like animal control. I had a friend that worked for, her husband worked for public works, and she said that they would pick up cats if people, you know, were calling them a pest. So they picked them up, and they didn't take them to like a shelter or anything. They took them to the edge of town at Indian Waters and dropped them off. And I didn't know if that was like a protocol with the city. Is that like?
so that explains, I was just gonna say, dumping is the issue. Like my mom
That-
had
and
one
that-
porch
this is
kitty.
coming from the
And
city
she lives in Indian
employees.
Waters, yeah, so.
This same employee that was doing animal control told me that he would take them out to Indian Waters. kittens, cats, it didn't matter.
They don't do that anymore.
No, they don't.
Thank you.
But maybe they could take them to go get spayed or neutered and then drop them off somewhere.
Right.
Well, to me, it's just the same home, and you still got starving animals.
And you've got starving animals, and you've got people that, and unfortunately, the city, people just will dump them. Like, they see Miss Stein feeding hers, so they go, oh, this is where I can put them. So they drive by and they dump them, and so then she's
Same
got
thing with the
more and more and
chickens.
more. And then, you know, we've got it's a whole montage of ducks and geese and.
Rebecca.
I think that having this on a workshop agenda tonight is a great place to start, but I really think it's probably gonna take some kind of a committee and some people that really, have some time to dedicate to this, to maybe do some research, and I don't know any among you who might volunteer to be a liaison to this effort, to work with the citizens in the area and try to figure out a method or a way or a program or something.
I would love to. It's definitely something that is high on my list, but I'm tapped out with time right now. I mean, I'm committed. I'm committee committed.
I am too right now.
I'm happy to look up grants.
I'll
It's
be
kind of my
able,
jam.
I will help
but-
in any way I
That's
can.
awesome.
Good. Thank you, Darcy.
That's great, and I'll do the cat committee or whatever. Yeah.
I can see what I can gather too on stuff.
I brought this up to our county commissioners, and it fell on very deaf ears.
I was gonna say, how far'd you get?
Yeah. Said, well, all I do is shoot them at my house.
Well,
That was our
when
commission.
when you brought this up to me, Laura, I kind of was under the impression that, that you were interested in working with a group to do something, but I understand how time is and
Well,
how we're all,
there's
limited.
a new program that,
Let's start with grants. We've got people, Josie said she would
I'll
step up
serve
and
on
help
the
us
committee,
with
but I
some
won't
things,
steer it.
Darcy, Jill. So let's start with grants.
Cool.
And then we'll maybe have another
Get back on
workshop,
another one.
and then maybe we can talk to two friends, and then maybe my plate is not as full or something at that time. But let's start with grants, and then we'll start with policies on our animal control side, on what we're gonna do, and
And
then
I've got Laura's phone number.
go from there. Okay.
Okay.
can I just add one tiny thing? Tony, I think what you just said is a great way to start, but I'm inspired by something that somebody mentioned earlier about sectioning off the town. So maybe really trying to get a few residents in certain pockets of town to have traps and, you know, so it's all spread out around town.
but
To
then
not-
you
to-
gotta take them to
Well, somebody
somewhere, you
does.
gotta have an
I might
appointment.
trap them, but I don't know if I'm gonna take them
Well, then we
anywhere.
need to have.
And
then I don't mind
like
taking them.
trapping them and taking them, but I'm tired of paying for it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where the grants come in.
Yeah.
And then you've got to have an appointment for that day.
Yeah, and let's
And
not
what-
advertise
How do you
this.
know when you're gonna travel?
Trap a feral
No,
cat.
no advertising outside the city, because then we'll get more people dumping. So if they know that we have a method of paying for this, whether it be our taxpayer money or grants that we've gotten, they will continue to dump. So they're gonna dump anyway, let's just let them dump naturally and we deal with it and not be overflown with it.
That's
So
why I thought it was a county problem, and that's why I took it to them first.
there's a lot of things that are county
I
problems.
know, I know.
Remember when you vote.
Oh,
Y'all ready to
Or
move on?
remember when you
Yes.
don't vote more.
Yes.
All right, council, let's move on. We've got
Thank
a
you
lot
all.
of good notes here, some stuff.
Yes,
I'll tell you a
thank you
funny
all.
grant story one day about Rilla wanting Jill to write a grant. Item,
Please move on.
I've already heard it this week.
so because Jill went from one grant writing class and Rilla comes in and says, okay, go write a grant. I'm like,
It
What?
was a 2-hour seminar,
For
let's
cats.
not get over. Here, move on.
Yeah. Okay, item 5 is the consent agenda. Item A is approval of an ordinance appealing ordinance 400, approving a budget amendment providing for severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict and establishing an effective date. Item B is consideration and ratification of the BEDC sale of property consisting of 0.801 acres located at Lot 2, Block 22, Indian Waters, for the price of $63,661,000. said sale having been determined by BEDC legal counsel to have met the requirements as set forth in local government code chapters 501 and 505. Rebecca?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent
Wait a second,
agenda.
hold on.
Could you, with the consent agenda, at least ask if anybody maybe doesn't want anything in the consent agenda? Because we had this problem last time.
Yes, ma'am, that's exactly what
I
was
withdraw my
thinking.
motion.
Okay, Tony?
I would like to remove B from the consent agenda because I didn't receive anything in my packet, or if I did, I don't know what it's about.
Okay,
Oh, yes.
that's all we need.
I'll second that.
You don't need a second, I just
Oh.
need it. Council just has to request.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, then item A, all in favor? Oh,
Well,
I have a motion, I need a second, I'm sorry.
so, with the removal of item B, I'll go ahead
Yes.
and now make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Darcy, thank you. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Okay, item B, consideration and ratification of the BEDC sale of property consisting of 0.801 acres located, anyway, I've read all that before. So anyway, so,
Dave, oh, go ahead.
this is the property that EDC sold to Silver Sage for the food bank. The one step that was missed in the process was it coming to council to be approved, and that's all this is. Tony, you have questions?
I guess I didn't realize it needed to come to council for approval.
It does.
So why are we doing it in a consent agenda way?
Right.
I don't,
Because the sale's already been closed, so it needs to be ratified by the council though.
so if it's in a consent agenda like this, don't you think we could have, as council, gotten more information on why it's on? I mean, because I had no idea any of this was happening.
Well, you mean the sale was happening?
No, it's just a weird place to put it. I mean, why, okay, I understand now why it's in the consent because the sale already happened.
Right.
What I didn't understand is, I guess I didn't
Why?
realize we approved it, but why is it approved, why is it, I guess my question was, why is it in the consent agenda? Dan had just answered it, but why didn't we get background on why it wasn't being approved in a normal process, which would be a normal agenda item? That's
Why didn't you
my,
ask that question Friday when the agenda went out, or Saturday, or
May I,
Sunday?
please?
because I read it today.
You read it, the agenda today?
Yes, I did.
So why do we send it out on Friday?
Hey, well, let's not shame
Oh,
anybody.
rather than-
We,
Yeah, so
I-
actually,
excuse me, I plead, I have the floor, I have the floor. I was really gonna ask for Dan to clear this up. There were some people talking around town that this was done wrong. I heard that, and so I said, hey, if this was done wrong, what needs to happen? And Dan advised that we needed the documentation, that was the advice of their attorney, that it didn't need to be approved by council. And that's what the EDC was advised by their attorney. Dan reviewed the documentation and found it to satisfying that
Well,
that
it's-
was,
yeah, I mean, it's,
I'm
I'm happy to address it if I could.
I would love
So,
that.
so any program or expenditure of an EDC has to be approved by the city council. And so the disconnect comes from, not Monty, but one of the associates with that firm advising them that they did not have to have council approval, and citing to the section in the local government code that has to do with how you sell property if you're a city. That's not the issue here. The issue is that because that was purchased with funding, and that purchase of that property had to come through the city council for approval because it was an expenditure to the EDC. EDCs, when they purchase property, they're required to do one of two things with it, right? You either have to use that property in a project, and if you do that, you can give it away because you have a performance agreement and there's clawbacks and people have to meet things. The other thing you do, if you sell it and it's not related to a project, you're required by law to receive fair market value. So to receive fair market value, there's multiple ways you can do that, right? And you know, if cities have ways they do it, the EDCs aren't bound to do it that same way. So their legal counsel advised them that the way they did it was fine, that they didn't need to be approved by council. I visited with their legal counsel on the phone, respectfully disagreed. That's not how we advise any EDC that we represent. But because that board was relying on advice of council, that's why it was placed on here on consent. I told Monty, look, I'll put it on the consent agenda, I'll ask my council to ratify it, they were relying on your legal advice or your associate's legal advice. You know, they acted in good, I have no issues with the EDC. They acted in good faith reliance on advice of legal counsel. And I just respectfully advise Monty, in the future, just understand that I have a very different opinion, and I feel like those have to come to the city council and be approved because of the way they were purchased, and so that the council can exercise their fiduciary duty to make sure that they were sold appropriately. And so that's the background on it, and I'm not, you know, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus or anything such as that. It's just a
No,
difference of
I'm
opinion.
about being transparent. I wanted that out on the table. I didn't understand why it was consent, but now I get it now. Okay.
You stated that, since they've already done the sale, that we have to approve it. I mean, is that literally true? I mean, not that I would want to not approve it, but I'm just trying to get educated here.
Yes, my recommendation is that you approve it. I did look at the the actual substance of the sale. The EDC did not lose money on this project. There's no doubt, and I would further say that the project that's going to happen on this property absolutely serves a public purpose. It's going to be a good project for the city of Bandera, but you know, I have no idea what other offers are out there or what other things might have been done with that property, but there's multiple parcels, and this is just one parcel. The plans for it are good, you know, and they did get more than for that parcel than they paid for it, so there, you know, wasn't a loss of any public funds or anything such as that.
I understand, but really, part of this is education. Are we required to approve that? So,
you know, you vote however you want to vote. It's if this council took the position that we're not approving that, then there's legal proceedings that would have to be taken in order to set that sale aside, which I personally as legal counsel don't recommend that because I don't think that's in the best interest of, you know, of the EDC, the city, or the communities.
I understand.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, ma'am.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Tony? Discussion? All in favor? Darcy, Tony, Christine, Rebecca in favor, all opposed? Jerry opposes. Thank you, Jerry. Okay, item 6, discussion of possible action on the following items.
Motion passes.
Ma'am?
Motion passes, is that
Yes,
just for the
motion
record?
passed. Item A, discussion of possible action on an ordinance amending Chapter 5 Fire Prevention and Protection of the Bandera Code of Ordinances, adopting updated codes and local amendments. This is a newer version. Dan, you want to explain?
Yeah, I'll speak to it a little bit. If you spent last night reading the other version, my apologies, I'm sure y'all did. But I know Rebecca did, because I got a call from Rebecca, and there were some lengthy comments that she had. I took another look at it, I went back through it, I tried to pare down the local amendments. Anytime you're looking at fire code and you're looking at the local amendments, and y'all can do this, you can go online and you can access the International Fire Code yourself and go chapter by chapter and look at the local amendments and see what it's actually amending.
No thanks.
But if you wanted to. And so I went back through and I did that, and where I felt like the local amendment was not truly necessary for Bandera the way the original code was written, I just went ahead and took that out. The changes from the first version you had, the mayor had some concerns that she expressed about, we don't really have an active fire chief because it's a volunteer firefighter. That's not unusual. So I broadened out who the fire code official would be as being the city administrator or qualified designee or agency. So that it can be the county fire marshal, it can be an outside inspector if need be, whatever it needs to be. So we gave flexibility there. Removed some of the provisions in the outdoor burning section that were going to be difficult to enforce and police anyway, having to do with wind and things such as that. Removed that. Cleared up some. Understand this about the fire code if you're not real familiar with the codes. When it talks about occupancies and it refers to types of occupancies, it's not talking about zoning, and I think most people understand it's talking about the type of structure and the type of use in that structure. And so when you go through those references, those designations are not about your place zoning, so those will not change. That's about the occupancies, and those designations are through all the international codes. They use the same designations. So when it says R3, it's talking about a type of residential occupancy, not a zoning classification. It's talking about dormitories, monasteries, multiple story, multifamily, group homes, things such as that one is. And that's just, I'm just trying to, some of the things, some of the questions that I've received on it. Another thing is that in the fire code, there is a provision in there already that doesn't require a local amendment that has an exception for historical buildings. So if there's a building that has state designation or any local designation as a historical structure, they don't have to come up to the requirements of the fire code. Even when they do renovations, expansions, if they move the structure, they still don't have to come up to the fire code, but they do have to have a fire safety plan that they provide. So, but they don't have to sprinkler and do those kinds.
State designation or vocal.
Or a local designation.
Local designation.
Yeah, if there's a local.
The majority of ours don't have that though, and they consider themselves historic.
So that's a topic for another meeting.
Right, but I
will
just
say-
wanna make that point, is that,
I
that there, it's a
understand.
very, I mean, you made that, but we don't have those, very many of them.
There isn't truly anything. If you have a local historical society, even if you don't do it as a zoning classification, if you believe as a council and as a community that there's gonna be benefit to have some type of local designation, the code doesn't make any distinction. It doesn't say it has to be zoned as a historical property. It says if it has a designation as a historical property, either by the state or the local governmental entity. That's pretty broad, but I am not here speaking as a THC authority or anything, but there might be an opportunity there.
Texas Historical Commission.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry, I've been
No,
dealing with
yeah,
pieheads all
no.
day.
No, I'm not a THC authority.
Literally, I've been dealing with pieheads all day.
No,
They might qualify for, most of them are in Austin.
but I think
No,
that,
they were in my office.
what were the
I
other
mean,
ones?
I mean, the
So,
Texas
okay, so there was
Historical.
also questions about
Oh.
street widths and things like that.
I was concerned that the turn radius requirements were gonna conflict with our subdivision ordinances in places where we wanted to, and I, to improve walkability, one of the big pieces with Simple City was reducing turn radius. And now these are saying you gotta have those and yeah, you just
Well,
is that
it's
what
to
you
avoid a
want?
40-point turn with a fire engine while it's trying to put out a fire, is the
Well,
idea.
Have you ever been
But,
to
but,
the East Coast, any historical town?
Well, so, yeah, it only applies, that's new construction, if you have a new subdivision come in. The other thing I'll tell you is that your subdivision regulations establish minimum standards. That's not not the end of the story, that's just the minimum standard. So if they come in and that's the minimum standard, but to meet fire code, they have to add 3 foot to that radius, they're gonna do it, because it's a health safety issue. And, I looked at the cul-de-sacs in your subdivision regulations, and they have different, they measure them differently, they don't list them the same as the international code or the fire code as to what that radius is. So I don't know the answer to your question, I'm not an engineer,
Okay.
if it's different.
Berkey?
So I did actually pour over the one that we got on Friday. Fire code, even though I am not a fire expert. But, so you did take out the wind expert, okay, cause I was like, I don't want our marshals or somebody out there with like a wind thing
A
and
sock.
out there, I'm like, if it can't be
Puts
less
it on
than
his
5
car.
miles an hour, no more than 15 miles an hour, I'm like, how the heck are they gonna know? Okay.
Yeah, check that out, and honestly, I mean, just to be clear, the outdoor burning provisions that are in there were borrowed, most of them were borrowed from Kerrville, because that's in close proximity, very similar atmospheric conditions and things such as that, same kind of foliage. If they're excessive, pare them down, if they're more than y'all want here, take them,
Actually
pare them
liked
down,
it. I really
I thought they were pretty reasonable compared to what we had.
Good idea.
118 pages. Yes,
I'd
Darcy.
like to make a motion.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept that we approve.
Approve an ordinance?
Yeah. I'm having a day.
Jerry,
I'll second that.
further discussion, council?
Just
Rebecca?
one quick comment. I don't know if our fire marshal ever did look these over. He told me he was very willing to and interested in working cooperatively with the city. But just that, we can add and take away amendments as needed. This is new. We've been nervous about this one and kind of putting it off to make sure we don't jump in with something that's gonna negatively impact the,
So are you asking that we send it to him and ask for his opinion?
no, I wanna move forward
That's-
with the vote.
No, I meant not in lieu of approving, but maybe as, like, do you see anything wrong with what we approved?
Not right now, but
Okay.
I thought from the last time this was on the agenda that it was gonna be sent to him, but I didn't do that personally.
Let me respond to that. He, in fact, Will should respond to that. Will spoke with him. There you go.
After the last time this was discussed, I did get it in his hands, of course it was the previous amendment, not the late night, last night ones evidently, but he has visited with me several times. He has been snowed under with work because they have stuck several extra duties on him, and he said he was trying to get it looked over. As of the last time I spoke to him, which was I believe Friday, this past Friday, he had not
Okay.
got to sit down, but he assured me he would, and if there was anything that concerned him, mostly what I told him, I was kind of making an executive decision on, that y'all wanted a local perspective from a local person, and that's what, he asked if y'all had any specific concerns, and I said, no, he's from here originally. I said, they want a local voice, fire marshal's perspective on it.
Yeah.
He assured me that if he had any concerns, he would get back with me ASAP. And I've not heard back from him since then. He's been having to work on EMS radio towers and all manner of duties other than what he.
Call the vote, please.
signed up for.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate it.
Okay, all in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Thank you, council. I'm so glad we got that done.
Yeah.
Okay, item B, discussion and possible action on a final invoice for Texas Land and Right of Way. Dan, I believe you communicated with these guys.
I did, and you should have everything at your place there. You'll see the letter that I sent explaining to them why we were not paying that last invoice, and invited them to provide any information they had if it showed otherwise. You know, that it was work that was authorized, even if it wasn't in an executed authorization. You'll also have with you the response I received from Rob Brown. I also got a phone call from him, and you'll see that they did have 3 emails that, in their opinion, authorized work beyond the $60,000. They did, however, agree to reduce the bill by $4,682 to basically back out their profit and overhead, and they're asking the city to pay the remainder of that because, if, in their opinion, was authorized by the city administrator at the time.
Darcy.
What's your opinion, Dan?
I believe that is accurate.
Tony.
Did we know, did the city, all of us, whoever authorized that, did they know that they tapped out at 650? Because a lot of times when you're working with a consultant, I mean, they're not sitting there like, okay, you're at 650, if you tell me, you know, it's like,
real-time
it's
tally.
like, just assume, they're the ones keeping the bill, they're the ones keeping the tally and the cost, and we authorize 650,000, so at some point, whoever's keeping the cost on their side,
60,000.
I mean,
We have
60,000,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I saw.
The 650 was that offer.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're right, 60,000.
Take a breath.
I know, I was like, anyway, but
make
we
that turn
authorize
off.
an X amount of money, and they're the ones that know that. I mean, I've been a consultant for 22 years, that's how we roll. We know how much money we're authorized to spend, and until we get an official authorization, we know we're sticking our neck out. And so, at any time, did the city admin know that threshold had been met, or was he just doing daily business because he hadn't been told?
So, I have no idea what the answer to that is, but I believe that's the city administrator's responsibility.
Is this
as well.
something that we should confer with you? And
Certainly can.
I'd like to go in consultation with the attorney, please.
Can we
Okay,
take a
then,
quick recess up? Bathroom.
7:24, I'm going to recess the regular meeting. 7:22, I'm reconvening the regular session of the city council of the city of Bandera. Item B, discussion and possible action on final invoice for Texas Land and Right of Way. Darcy.
I'd like to make a motion to approve with the caveat that we as a council direct the mayor to send a strongly worded letter along with the final payment.
Thank you, Darcy. Do you have a second? Christine, you second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Begrudgingly.
All in favor, none opposed. Thank you, council. We'll get that. Yeah. Item C, discussion of possible action on an ordinance amending Bandera Code of Ordinances, section 1.03.031, to change the day and time of the regular meeting of council. Dan suggested this, and Dan, you want to explain it to council, please?
Yeah, so what had come up was, we had wanted to have the meetings today, the workshop at 5 and the meeting at 5:30, which doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But you have an ordinance that says that your regular meetings are held at 6 o'clock. And so I just suggested, just change the ordinance so that you have flexibility so you can move your time around. They're still on the first and third Tuesdays, but if the council needs to meet earlier for a regular meeting, you shouldn't be bound by a specific time in your ordinance. And so this just provides that flexibility. That's all.
I think what it gives us to council is, if we don't have a specific time in there, and Deb, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I understand, we don't have to have a super quorum for these regular meetings if we have one at 5:30 or 5 o'clock.
That's right. That's right. You don't want something to be a special called meeting unless absolutely necessary because it triggers a super quorum.
Thank you. Rebecca?
May I make a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Wait, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, if you wanna.
Well, it's discussion.
Yeah, come on.
But we can have discussion.
Can I
Yeah.
just click?
Yeah.
Do you want a motion first or not?
Yeah, go.
Okay, and because this was printed off Franklin, it wasn't the most current ordinance.
She fixed it, I think.
I did,
My packet still says Thursday.
So does
because
mine.
that was sent out Friday from Keely, but I already fixed it,
Okay,
so
that
it
was
says
gonna be-
Tuesday.
That was gonna be my question. So.
Okay, so then am I approving this? Because what I have in
Yeah,
front of
'cause
me
it's-
does not say Tuesday.
You're approving that because it's the
It's the
ordinance.
ordinance that you're approving.
The
Ordinance.
ordinance, not, yeah,
Do I have an ordinance number?
no, not yet.
No.
Okay, so my motion would be then to approve the ordinance, the unknown number regarding council meetings, place and time, to include the language in Exhibit A that reads, or at such a time on said date when a quorum of the city council is available to convene at a time posted in accordance with state law.
Thank you. Second, Jerry?
I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Thank you, council. All right, item 7 is closed session. The city council will meet in closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551074 personnel to deliberate the appointment, employment, and duties of a public officer or employee, to wit, the interviewing of candidates for the interim city treasurer positions. 7:46. Okay, 8:16, reconvening the regular session. Number 8 is action following closed session. Rebecca?
I'd like to make a motion to postpone this item to the first regular meeting in August.
Second.
Thank you, Darcy. Discussion? All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Item A, at 9, requested announcements. Item A, request by council to place items on an agenda. Rebecca?
For our very next regular agenda, may we please address setting a closing date for the treasurer position posting?
Yes. Darcy?
2 things. One we discussed earlier, but I'd like it on the record to request again that we place it on the next agenda to go out for RFQs for a company to do complete forensic audit on all city accounts, and how we discussed that being
Yes,
done.
ma'am.
And then also to take possible action on putting an ad in the newspapers and other places for the treasurer position in addition to TML.
Do we post that on our website?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, that was not.
It wasn't
Even
in
if
the
so, I'd
newspaper.
like to see it reposted,
Okay.
because it's probably been a while.
I have one, council, on August the 28th. That is the regular EDC meeting, and it's the 4th Thursday. I said August, is it July the 28th?
I'm like,
But
August.
our meetings are on Tuesdays.
Yes, ma'am, I know,
Sorry.
I'm not finished yet, thank you very much. So I would like to have a joint budget workshop with the EDC on that evening if possible. We've been scheduling a meeting on the Thursday following our meetings. It's just something that I'll reach out and see if everybody can figure it out. But
Say the date again, Mayor? August 20th.
Ma'am,
July 28th.
July? Oh, I thought you said August.
She meant
I did, I'm
July.
sorry, I was thinking the August meeting. But July the 28th is their regular meeting date, and if we could meet at 5:30 or 6 for a joint workshop, and then if they had business that needed to be taken care of that evening, they could go ahead and take care of it. See if they're available, and if y'all are available, just get everybody coordinated. And one more thing in the budget, you need to get,
I may not be
Move down the
available,
road.
but if everybody else is, then it should be fine.
if that won't work, just let me know.
I'm supposed to be out of town, but
She won't be out of town.
Well, that's the week before Labor Day, isn't it?
no. It's,
That's July, that's not
It's
August,
July.
no, it's not.
no, but I mean, if everybody else is here, then I'll,
Yeah.
then that's fine.
It's just a workshop. I mean, not just a workshop.
No, I
but-
understand, yeah.
Jerry?
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, sir.
I would like to
We
move
have
that
No
we.
announcements?
We
by
haven't
council?
gone
Oh,
to
I'm sorry.
announcements.
Oh, I was in a hurry, I'm sorry.
Any other agenda items, guys? Okay, announcements. Rebecca,
Just two quick ones that I'm announcing to who?
To us,
Okay. Well,
the minutes.
Vaccinate Bandera was invited to Fun Friday at the Boys and Girls Club Teen Center this Friday. If anyone needs a vaccine, ages 5 up, all boosters available, and primary vaccines. And then Summerfest Saturday is going to be a huge and hopefully very fun event. Hope everybody can make it out to support
And
Shotgun
hopefully
Team.
the river authority doesn't condemn the river before then, because that was gonna be my announcement, we're in drought. We need to have some sort of,
Oh,
something about drought conditions and the fact that that needs to be on our next agenda.
I am getting static reports from Public Works as we speak. Lance has been really ill, we're gonna go there. Anyway, John is getting me static reports, and we will be posting according to our ordinance, whatever it is, from June of 2000. But
did you find it?
it's really cool. I mean, it's got all the,
Cause
Yeah.
the water stopped flowing over the bridge this week.
yes ma'am.
It's nasty.
You found it?
It is very nasty.
I didn't find it.
I
She
knew
knows
it was
what you
there.
have. Yeah.
So
Okay.
can we,
I'll,
On what?
I'll ask them.
no, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked any kind of question.
What are we
Okay.
talking
But I
about?
agree that it should go on the agenda. If we could go hop back to item A real quick and make that a request.
I moved it up there.
Thank you.
We will also put
Now
no
it's-
fireworks
That
in
you
the
said
city
it not
limits.
drought
Right.
as an agenda item.
I was just making
Well,
an
we've done
announcement to
that.
remind everybody it's no drought, it's drought,
Yeah.
water conservation.
I don't know that we
We
should
have
be
a water
discussing
conservation plan.
These are just
Set it out.
announcements.
Let me just
Okay.
send y'all all
Yeah.
information on this,
Fine.
what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Yep.
Jerry,
Hey,
did you
Jerry.
wanna make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion, please. I move that we adjourn this meeting.
I'll
Second.
second.
Jerry, Darcy, Tony, Christine,
In favor.
all in favor?
All right.
8:29.